All right, we're going to be hopping in and having a discussion about a virtual training Greg attended. It was probably almost a week ago now, if I'm not mistaken. Unfortunate, my schedule did not work out. It was during the day, I believe, 3 whole days. Also, I think it was. I don't know what time it was, from what time it started to what time it ended. That doesn't really matter. But the point is, it was an all-day event, right? It was held by Tony Robbins, a big Tony Robbins fan. He was a mentee of Jim Rohn, and Jim Rohn, if you haven't realized or discovered, is a huge influence on my life. So, yeah, anytime you get to be around folks like that, kind of goes into that with our peak framework, right? That K portion, that knowledge or that wisdom, right? Folks that been there, done that, can really open some perspectives into a different way of being, a different way of living. Yeah, it's always so much fun. So it's unfortunate that I didn't get a chance to attend myself, but I thought, well, hey, you said you took a ton of notes. So I don't have any idea what Greg's going to share with us today, but he's going to be going over some of the big takeaways. He's got some things prepared for us today that I'm super excited to dive into. So, man, yeah, take it over. Tell me more about this conference. I don't even remember what it was called. He had like a specific thing. He even named it, right? Which was super exciting. But yeah, tell me more about this conference. I can't wait to have this discussion today.
Yeah, Time to Rise was
Time
the
to
name of the
rise.
event.
Love it.
And it was a free event. It was 3 days, about 3 to 4 hours every day. And it was really cool. I think he ended with under 1.4 million people watching this event, which
And
is,
you said it was like per day, right? 1 point, or was that total?
no, I
One
think
point.
from my understanding, I think it started at 1.2 and then it went to 1.3. And I think it just hit under 1.4
Wow.
the last day.
Wow.
And he was on YouTube, he was on Facebook, he was on all these different platforms because I don't think one platform could hold everybody, which is
He was crashing
insane.
the internet, huh?
Pretty much, yeah. And I mean, that's just that's the value that he has, right? Where he can touch people all over the world, 1.4 million people, and he's offering this for free. And obviously, he's talking about his other programs and everything. But again, if you just attended this, I got a lot of notes out of this that were awesome, and I'm going to share them with you. And this was my first time really diving into a Tony Robbins event. I've read, I think, one of his books, and I've heard him on some podcasts, but I've never really, deep dove into giving my time to Tony. And it was really cool. It was really, yeah, we're going to get into it, but it was definitely beneficial. And I mean, where you want me to start, but I'll just kind of start with my notes or.
Was that? Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is I wasn't there, so I have attended. It's been a few years now. I've never really been to a live event, and they say that Tony on stage is like it's like a tornado. Meaning he's got so much energy and he's just all over the place, and I can only imagine. So even I have attended a virtual conference like this with him before. I didn't attend this one, unfortunately. And now the way you talked about it already is like, man, I should have figured that out, but unfortunately I did not. But yeah, so I can only imagine kind of what the big takeaways were. So yeah, I'm going to really leave it up to you. Share them in any order. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, whatever you feel our audience would have the biggest impact for them, right? That's kind of the whole point. And the idea is that we want to share ideas, some things that they can take away right away, right? Start implementing in their own life and start
Mhm.
seeing some significant changes, right? So yeah, I'm really open to wherever you want to start. So yeah, have at it.
Yeah, so the first one I want to talk about is it kind of continues from our previous podcast where we talked about identity and becoming and the outcome. Because Tony hit on this, and it really made me think of, my weight loss journey, losing the 60 pounds. I think I've kind of hit that one to death on this podcast, so I think people know about that by now. But he was basically saying, he asked a few questions like, what was the moment that changed it all? What was that light bulb moment of I need to make that change, which is a good question to ask yourself. Or what moment do you need to have to make that change if you haven't made that change already? And then the follow-up question was, what made that change last? Meaning I've been trying to lose weight for 15, 20 years of my adult life, and I finally did it. What made that change last? What made me not bounce back to going back and eating unhealthy and not working out and everything? And it was kind of like a mini journaling exercise, which I know you love, Randy. Um, but for me, I journal off and on. It was really cool just to see it. I put it on paper. It wasn't just in my head. I referenced one specific doctor that was the moment that changed it all for me. And it'd be
Really?
really,
A specific moment. That's super cool.
yeah, there was one, my friend, Dr. Rachel in Arizona, she was kind of diagnosing me or looking at me. And she said, basically, you need to get to the hospital ASAP. It's either this or this, either way, go. And that scared the crap out of me. And that fear was in the beginning was my driving force to losing the weight, because I never wanted to hear those words again. You need to get to the hospital right away. Nobody wants to hear that for themselves or for a loved one. So anyway, bringing it back to the event, it was really cool that it was like a mini journaling session for me. And I still have the notes. I still look at it, and it just really hits home for me. And it just drives home the power of journaling, which I know you're a big fan of, and just getting it out of your head and onto paper.
You talk about beating something to death, right? Yeah. Journaling, folks. Journal. Get it out on paper. I'm telling you, it's life-changing. I never would have guessed it for myself. I put it off for the longest time. Jim, once again, Jim Rohn, he's always talking in my ear, because he was always talking about it to me, saying journal. And I was like, I'm not, for the longest time. And then I decided that I was going to pick it up, right? And I'm telling you, it's been a huge difference. And so I'm glad you had that experience as well. I'm not going to go down that road today. We've gone down that road in other episodes. But so the big takeaway I'm hearing from you, and we had this discussion, once again, I'm not recalling exactly which episode it was, but making that outcome, that goal, that destination bigger than yourself, meaning it's got to be your why. If you're changing your identity, right? If you want to change your identity, it has to be for a reason bigger even than yourself, right? So if you're just stuck in your own mind thinking, well, I'll give it a try. Well, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, or we use drinking, or we're talking about drinking in the last episode. Well, I won't have this drink today, but you're not making it bigger than yourself, bigger than life, right? There's got to be a reason for it. And if you don't have that reason big enough, it's going to be easy to fall right back into your old ways. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say. Would you agree that's kind of where he was taking that?
Yeah. And that's another point that he actually made. And part of my notes here is he said that, the ultimate goal is a feeling. No matter what your goal is, whether it's to earn $1 million, to look great on the beach, to be healthy inside and out, it's not the 6-pack abs or the $1 million in the bank. It's, what does that give you? What feeling, earning $1 million or having $1 million might give you a feeling of safety and security. Like, if something bad happens, I can handle I can weather the storm. The feeling of, looking good on the beach, it might be, ego, or, just wanting to look good, wanting to impress others. And then feeling good health-wise, that's a feeling that, you feel joyous, you feel healthy, you feel like, again, you're probably in the safer zone of, an illness not taking you down or anything. So that's what I kind of realized. I put that in my notes too, is, I want more money to feel safe, secure, and happy, but everything comes down to a feeling. And the ultimate goal is, just like we talked about, in the previous episode, is just the outcome. It's just what happens, right? And exactly to your point, that the why, you ask yourself why, you need a big why. As a tool that I use as a coach now is the why exercise. You keep asking the client, why do you want $1 million? Well, I want it for this reason. Okay, why is that important to you? And then they keep on going down. And ultimately, you get to a feeling. Usually it's a feeling, right? And that's what it is. And that's what we all want in the end is, usually it's safety, security, happiness, to feel loved, to feel part of a group. That's what a lot of our goals come down to. But it was really interesting because I've heard the why part before, the Tony Robbins event, but never that your ultimate goal is a feeling. And I just thought through everything of my own goals, whether they're big or small. It's a feeling. I mean, any thoughts on that, Randy?
Yeah. So that's hit me like in real time. My mind is racing like crazy. So I'm trying to even process that, because I think maybe I've thought about that before, but not as deep as kind of what you're sharing, because you're right. It is what we're trying to accomplish. So it's not the thing that we need. You mentioned money. I mean, I would talk about like the 69 Camaro or the cars that I want, right? It's not the things, it's how that thing is going to make me feel when I'm burning the tires off of it.
Right.
Or, going as fast as I can, right? Without killing anybody. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's going to feel, I mean, I'm getting excited thinking about that right now, right? So it's like I'm having that experience in real time. So that goal or that destination, having that thing will drive me to experience that and have that experience so that way I can have that feeling. I like that. Like I said, I think maybe you've thought about that to that extent. I don't think I've really put two and two together like that. So I love that, to be honest with you. So like you were talking about with the weight loss, right? I mean, the six pack abs and the thin and trim and all that good stuff, right? It's not that we want to put ourselves through to get to that process, but when you get to the point where you're feeling good about yourself, when you look at yourself in the mirror, or when you're trying to put on a piece of clothing, whether you're man or woman, doesn't really matter. When you feel good about yourself, there again, it's that feeling. When you feel good about yourself, that's when it's like, yes, that's why I was willing to do all of the things up to this point to experience that feeling in that moment. Love that. Yeah, love that. Please continue. I'm going to hog the microphone talking about it. Stop me.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was
Love it.
that was a good takeaway for sure for me. And then yeah, two other ones I want to talk about is he said the three traits of a leader. And when I say leader, or at least when I hear leader, it's me leading myself, right? It's not like me leading a corporation or anything. It's how I talk to myself. You know, Randy talks about win within, right? It's leading from within, or how you want to lead your day, your mindset. So the three traits that he mentioned was, the first one is see it as it is, not worse than it is, which for me, which I have some, on and off bouts with anxiety, this one hit me like dead between the eyes, right? Of like, don't think about how it can, or how worse it can be. Just think about what is it right now. So that was one that that's the first trait of a leader. The second one is see it better than it is. So again, with mindset and personal development, be a little bit more optimistic and say, all right, this is the situation as it is. That's step one. See it better than it is. Okay, how can we improve it? What's the best case scenario, or even the next step up from where it is right now? And then the third trait was make it the way you see it, which means basically take step two and turn that into a real life action or outcome. So does that make sense? See it as it is, not
Yes.
worse than it is. See it
Yes.
better than it is, and then make it the way you see it in step two.
Yes. So it's almost, I'm trying to take this like you're teaching me. And so, yes, I can 100% see that. So the idea is that we've had discussions about it before, right? Have an overactive imagination, right? That's one of the greatest gifts we've ever been given, right? The God-given gift of an imagination. We can imagine a future. We can also imagine a past, right? We can put labels on that imagination of good, bad, doesn't really matter. We attach a meaning to that imagination sometimes. And I think that's where he's getting at, is that so being present in the moment is number one. That's the most crucial thing. Seeing it as it is. And then from that moment, using your imagination to think about it with a positive outcome or a positive spin versus a negative spin, because we can easily do that as well. I will admit, once again, I grew up, I would say, more in a pessimistic environment, so which has led me to be pessimistic about a lot of things in life. That has helped me in a few things. So it's kept me out of trouble. It's kept me from overextending into things, but it's also held me back in others because I've been so pessimistic. So I've had to work that muscle of my imagination to be more positive. So you can use that imagination into being more positive. And so I'm trying to do that every day. And then go to work. So Jim, this goes back to what Jim says in my ear all the time. He would say, go to work and make it real. And that's all he would say. And what that means is, okay, you've got this imagination. You've used your imagination to envision this positive outcome. And because of that, now who do you need to become to make that outcome a reality? Mm-hmm. Understanding that it goes back to your first thing. It's the feeling that you want to experience, right? And making it bigger than yourself. So who do you need to become to have that experience at the end? So that's kind of, when you were going through that, those are the three things that were going on in my mind. Did that make sense, or did that kind of correlate, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, it definitely correlates. And, like we always talk about on this podcast, is you always have a choice of how you think, and what you believe, right? We talked about that in the last podcast episode as well, beliefs. So yeah, I mean, that's the three traits of a leader that Tony, kind of just went over, and he went over them pretty quickly, but those are, that's the meaning that I kind of attached to those three. And then I'm just, trying to figure out how to implement this in my life and utilize it to, kind of help me move forward. Right.
Little changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just taking these ideas, these concepts, even everything that we've tried to discuss here on the podcast, folks, you just take little bits of it. That's my goal, or that's my hope, is that something within each episode will resonate with you, with who you're trying to become, and you just try to apply it, right? Just try it. Now, once again, Jim talked about that all the time in his programs. He said, just try it. You don't have to do everything that I say. You don't have to believe how I believe. You don't need to act. You're not trying to become me. You need to become you. So, but if something resonates with you, or if an idea or a concept, or, just try it. That's how he would say it too. He would say, just try it. And if you don't like it, throw it away. It doesn't matter. It didn't cost you anything other than a little bit of time, a little bit of an effort. But what if it was the right thing at the right time? What if it was exactly what you needed in that moment to change the trajectory of your life, your family's life? Once again, that legacy piece moving forward. What if it was exactly what you needed in that moment? And all it took was just trying it. And when you do that over and over and over, just keep trying it. And don't get caught up in the outcome. So it's like, I believe we talked about that in the last episode with our identity, right? We get caught up on, okay, it didn't work. Well, then we beat ourselves up, and then we just fall right back into who we were. You can't let that happen. You've got to keep pushing forward. It's going to be a challenge. It's so Jim Rohn's program, the challenge to succeed. It's a challenge. You've got to continue to push forward, move forward, become more every single day. That's why it's so much fun, because when you realize that, yeah, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. Give yourself some grace. It's okay. I do that for myself. Every now and then I'll beat myself up over, I should have done this or I should have done that. It's okay. It's okay. Nothing is going to fall apart. The world's not going to come to an end. It's just, what do I want in that moment? That's kind of what I try to sit with the questions for myself every single day. So yeah, loving this so far, Greg. What else you got from that conference? This is great.
Yeah, the next one actually kind of blends into what you're just speaking about. So,
are we reading each other's minds, or did I see your notes?
I know, right? You peeking through my computer here?
Yeah, honestly, no, folks. Yeah, this is so much fun. Please continue. This is great.
So Tony was talking about the 3 core skills for success, and I kind of correlated to habits. And again, he went over them kind of quickly, but the first one he said was recognizing patterns. The second is pattern utilization. And then the third one is pattern creation. And his example was in business, right? If you want to own a business or start a business, but I took it as you can do this for anything in your life, any habit, any goal. So the first thing is recognizing your current patterns. As far as if you want to maybe break a bad habit, what are your patterns? Are you waking up and eating something bad for you every morning? If you do it consistently, you have to recognize that pattern and say, all right, well, is that serving me? Is that going to get me to my goal? And the next part in that example, I guess, would be, utilizing patterns, right? So you'd have to understand that the pattern is not working for you, and then create a pattern that is going to work for you, right? So it sounds pretty simple, but I guess it is simple, but it's not easy because, like you said, it's a challenge, right? Because
you're changing. You have to change who you are, right? Once again, you're challenging those beliefs that you've got in your own mind.
Yeah, and we're not used to doing that, right? Because we live in patterns all the time. I mean, patterns are basically habits, right? And we have good habits and bad habits, and whether we recognize them or not, that's a different story. But that's the first awakening, or the first part of your awakening, is to recognize, hey, I'm unhappy in this area of my life. What does that area of my life look like? If there's a whole bunch of, maybe 2 or 3 negative patterns that are within, your weight loss, let's say, recognizing that and saying, all right, I really need to change this. Then you create new ones, and then you utilize them in the future. That's, it kind of goes along with that stop, start, continue exercise, which I love doing. I actually have a piece of paper right next to me that I keep writing things down. Stop, start, continue, because it's a constant, a fluid motion of consciousness, of writing things down. And some things that I'm starting, they're moving over to the continue section. And, it's ever growing, I guess.
Yeah, it's always changing. That's the thing. It's part of it, folks. You've got to realize that once you begin down this journey, if you've listened to Greg in this episode or in other episodes, you're going to realize that once you start down this personal development journey, it's fun, it's exciting, it's challenging, it's hard. I mean, it's all of it, and you're going to have to change. You're going to have to change who you are. If you want to become more, you've got to change, once again, your identity, your beliefs, all of the things that we've even talked about today. And yes, it's not easy, but I will tell you from personal experience, and I think Greg would back me up on this too, that journey, that becoming, it's fantastic. And when you get to that feeling, of positivity, when you realize that you're accomplishing more in a relatively short period of time because you're working towards becoming that better version of yourself through this, working on your internal dialogue, through working through even our peak framework, right? The personal development, the self-education, right? Taking massive action, and then seeking knowledge and wisdom from folks that have been there, done that. That's what it's all about. And when you do this consistently, it's like what you just said, the stop, start, continue. I love that. That's a great exercise. I can't say that I do that personally myself, but I do that almost like mentally. I don't necessarily write it down, but I love how you're writing that down. And that would maybe be some encouragement for you folks, is to write that down. What are some things you need to start? And then once you start, or if you have been starting on some other things, what things you need to stop? You need to eliminate from your life, because you need to eliminate some certain things as well. And then when things that are working for you, just keep them going, keep them moving, build some momentum. It's amazing when you build some momentum, how quickly, once again, you can achieve so many things in a relatively short period of time. Yeah. Love that too. Yeah. Anything else? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think, exactly what you said. I'm kind of taking your journaling here. I guess my stop, start, continue is a form of journaling, because I'm, putting it down on paper.
I didn't want to bring up journaling again, Greg, but I guess if you have to, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's one of my, it's just one thing that I have right next to me on my desk here. And speaking of journaling, one other thing that I've done, and I don't know, I've never actually heard anybody do this. I just started doing it on my morning walks. I do like a audio journal, which I'm sure people have done it, but on the phone, you can hit record and record yourself. And one morning I thought, you know what, I don't want to listen to a podcast, because, that's taking in information, which is great, but I want to put out information in, from my brain to some other platform. And I thought, well, I'm only going to, do this for myself. So I just hit record, and I just recorded my thoughts as I was walking around my neighborhood. I had my earbuds in and everything, and just recorded my thoughts, my day, anything that kind of came to mind. Like when you're journaling, you just write down whatever. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to flow. It doesn't have to anything. So just for people out there who don't want to put pen to paper, another alternative would be to do the audio journaling. See if that works for you. It's, again, I kind of go back and forth. Once in a while I'll write something, but other times I'll just hit record and go for a walk, and it works for me. So just throwing that out there to our listeners.
Love it. Yeah. So once again, there's no right, there's no wrong. It's just whatever will work for you. And if that works for you, Greg, if that gets you kind of in that habit of just getting your thoughts out of your own mind and then just kind of out there, to whether you re-listen to them all the time or not, that's, obviously you can make that decision. My journal entries, I will go back to them once or twice a year and just kind of look through. It's interesting to see what my mindset was 6 months ago to what it is today, or maybe I've gone through a growth period. I've had some challenges, right? Family, business, podcast, whatever, right? And I will, because I'm journaling about them in real time at that moment. But then 6 months, 12 months, a year later, it's amazing when you go back to them. It's like, wow, how much you can really realize how much you've really grown in that time period, right? Which is always so much fun for me. So yeah, I love that. Yeah, folks, grab your phone. I mean, that's the thing, is we've got phones. Most of us have got phones right in our pocket 99% of the time, or at least within probably 5 feet of us. Yeah, if you're by yourself, and if it's awkward, just go by yourself. It's like Greg's talking about, doing it on a walk. Have your earbuds in if it's got a microphone on it. And once again, you're not worried about quality. You're just worried about getting getting it out of your mind. Get it so that way you can, it's almost like once you expose it, then you can start picking it apart, start questioning, do I really believe that? What do I think about this? Maybe you're going through a challenge in your life, a financial challenge or a health challenge like we've talked about before. Get that out. Start talking about it, even if it's to yourself. And then you can start analyzing it, trying to come up with some ideas. That's been my experience as well. When you do this, and maybe Greg, you can let me know if it's been this way for when you're talking about it. But when you start bringing it to life like that through my journaling process, ideas start to form.
Mm-hmm.
Some different ways of accomplishing whatever goal I'm trying to get to, right? Whatever challenge I'm moving through, ideas will start to form. Maybe not in that moment, but throughout the day or throughout the next week, or an opportunity will arise. Something like that has been my experience as well. That once you get clear of what your challenge is and really acknowledge it, that's when you can start accepting and receiving some benefit. It's like, where do I need to go? Who do I need to speak to? Those kinds of things. Have you had any experience with that so far with your audio version of the journaling?
Yeah, definitely. And that's why and I know there's some correlation between walking and the brain kind of coming up with, creativity and ideas. So kind of putting those two together. Yeah, there's definitely things that I will, just kind of think about in my ramblings as I'm walking. And, it won't just be about how I'm feeling or what's going on with me. It's, oh, that's a good idea for the podcast, or, hey, let me, write this down real quick, or I'm recording it so I can go back and listen to it. Right. So you don't have to worry about forgetting about it. So yeah, that's why I like doing it with the walking, just because I know for me, the movement just kind of helps my brain kind of flow a little bit and just have that fluidity.
Mine as well. Yeah. So a lot of times, even before we hit record, I try to get a walk in myself because, getting the blood pumping, right? Getting your juices flowing, it really helps my thinking as well. Unfortunately, we were hitting record a little earlier here today than normal. I didn't get a chance to get my walk in, but maybe you did, Greg. So hopefully you did. But anyways, getting out, getting a walk, get some exercise in. Yeah, I agree. You get some ideas flowing, some different things come from that. And when you throw in that piece of the, like a verbal diary, right? Or a verbal journal. I like that. I like that idea. I might give that a shot myself. That's a great idea. Appreciate you sharing that. Any more thoughts from this conference from Tony Robbins? Any more things you want to share?
Yeah, there's plenty. So I don't want to, yeah.
Well, you pick which ones, or one or two that you think would be the most impact. Can't wait to hear more.
Yeah. So one of the things he said was, complexity is the enemy of execution, which I've heard that before, or something similar to that before, but it just really, again, like you said, sometimes the timing when you hear something, meaning if it's simple, then you're probably going to execute it. But if you make it more complex or more complicated, then there's more barriers in the way. There's more reasons for you to make excuses, right? But if there's one step to achieving something, there's no excuse not to do it, especially if it's a real easy step, or something easy to accomplish. So complexity is the enemy of execution, which, execution is obviously what we need to do to achieve all of our goals, right? We need to take action and do something. What are your thoughts on that? The complexity is the enemy of execution statement.
Yeah. So I'm instantly going to the reference of the podcast, right? Starting and launching the podcast, launching content, launching the website, launching everything that we've done up to this point. Complexity was not part of my process in the beginning, right? I made it super simple. So my suggestion to folks, if you have any inkling to try to create, to start, to launch a brand, a podcast, something like that, like you just said, make it super simple. Pick 2 or 3 things that you need to do right off the bat to get that party or get that started, get that momentum beginning to build. You don't need to necessarily worry about all the details that come along with launching a podcast, or even launching an episode, or any of that. You don't need to worry about any of that. Creating a website. I mean, it's like your mind starts going down a rabbit trail. Okay, I need a website, which means I need a domain name, which means I need to get hosting, which means I need to get colors, and I need to, you start going down that rabbit trail, which then creates the complexity, which will then shut you down. You'll just stop. You're like, that's going to be impossible to do. I'm just not going to do any of it. Whereas if you just keep it super simple, get your idea, really, you can journal about it, you can talk about it, you can whatever you want, right? Flesh it through. So when I first started with the Rich Mind podcast, I had the idea of personal development, talking about mixed with some financial education, which is where the Rich Mind idea came from. I went through and I listed, the first thing I did is I listed 50 potential topics I could talk about with personal development, and 50 separate topics that I could talk about. And the number 50, that's just an arbitrary number. It could be 10, it could be 5, it could be 100. It doesn't matter. But the point is, that's what I started with. I went with, okay, could I come up with 100 episodes that I could then have a conversation about? if I could do that, then I would take the next step. And that's where I started. So that would be my suggestion. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say, is that keeping it super simple. Yes, you need to take action, but if you take no action, or if you start and then stop and start and stop, you'll never get anything accomplished. But keep it super simple in the beginning. And that's really what I did here in the podcast. So if anybody's out there having questions or concerns about even doing something like that for themselves, reach out to us. Let us know. Let me know, right? If you have an idea for a podcast and you're like, where do I even begin? Raise your hand, send us an email, info@richmind.co, and let us know. I'd be more than happy to try to help you break it down, right, into the easy to consume processes and steps. Greg does that with writing books, right? Publishing books. That's like his thing. That's what he does. I was telling him the other day, he's like, how in the world do you do that? And he started telling me. I'm like, well, can you teach me? And he goes, yeah. I'm like, fantastic. Tell me step one and I'll do step one. And that's the whole point. You need to start with step one first, and don't worry about steps 8, 9, 10, 12, 100, right? We'll get there. You'll get there. But yeah, keep it super simple.
Yeah, one analogy that I've heard from a podcast, or I listen to Rob Dial a lot. He's great. He's a mindset mentor. And his example is with complexity is, if I'm driving from my house to your house, Randy, in Indiana, right? I'm not going to see every piece of road in between right now. I'm only going to see the next 100 feet that I can kind of visualize and see in between, the windshield, right? But you still keep on going. So there's no way for me to see, the next state over and then the next state over, but you just keep on going, and you have to know where you're starting, right? The GPS asks where you're starting and where you're going to go. And then it just takes you 10 feet at a time, 100 feet at a time. You don't know what the next 15 miles is going to look like, but you continue anyway. Same thing with exactly what you're talking about, Randy, writing a book, starting a podcast, losing weight, whatever it is. Just take that first step. You can write down all the steps, but then just knock them out one by one. You don't look at number 5 when you're on number 1, because that's going to get you all frazzled. Look at number 1 and then take care of number 1. And then you move on to number 2. You just move on to that next 100 feet that you're looking at.
Love it. Yeah. Work step 1 to completion, right? Then move on to step 2. Well, there'll be a little bit of bleed over, maybe a little bit, but not enough to keep you derailed, worrying about step 10 or 5 or whatever, when you're just trying to get the ball rolling, get started. I love that. That's super cool. Awesome, man. Any more thoughts? Anything else from the conference before we start to wrap this one up, bring it in for a close?
No, I mean, those are just the, 4 or 5 areas that I really took. I took a lot of notes, but those are the ones that really jumped out at me. I would definitely recommend, going to a conference, or, there are live ones like this one out there. So, if you don't have a lot of money or you can't travel, there's a lot of virtual conferences, and, find one that, suits you. Some people love Tony Robbins, some people aren't a fan, and that's just like anything in life, right? You're going to have the people that you kind of gravitate towards and other people that, you might not, and that's totally fine. But finding the people that you want to be with in that room or on that screen with, there's plenty of resources out there. And Randy and I always talk about, continuing your self-education. And, Tony Robbins is a great example, or somebody in your town or community. However you find that person or people or group, we encourage you to do that, because that is taking the next step forward. That's step 1 and that first 100 feet that we're talking about.
Love it. Yeah, you've got to get out there and keep working on that self-education. Getting yourself in different rooms, whether it's virtual rooms even, is fine, right? Get yourself exposed to different ideas, different concepts. That's kind of the whole idea here with even the podcast, but just get yourself exposed to different things to help you become this bigger, better version of yourself, which is what we're all trying to strive to do, right? But we're definitely trying to help you with that here on the Rich Mind podcast. So, I think we're going to wrap this one up here today. Folks, don't really have an idea for the next episode, which is where you're going to come in. You're going to help us. If you wouldn't mind, send us an email, info@richmind.co, and give us some ideas, some topics that you want to hear about, some things, some discussions that you think Greg and I would have a good discussion about, right? Maybe it's something that he and I need to do a little bit more investigation on. Maybe you're going through a challenge for yourself. Maybe you've got some ideas about launching a podcast. Maybe you have some ideas about being a published author, publishing your own books, and how do you even do that? Which those are the kinds of questions that I have. How do you even do that? But anything like that, we're open to have the discussion, right? To teach you, to show you what you're looking for. It doesn't have to always be what Greg and I are trying to come up with, thinking, for you. You can help us, right, to create some of the content, and that's what we're really looking for. So once again, send us an email, info@richmind.co. Let's use the word topic. How's that sound, Greg? Topic sound good?
Perfect.
Awesome. We'll use the word topic as the subject line to give us some ideas of some things that we can share with you in the next episode or episodes. If we get enough feedback, right, we'll definitely branch it into more than just one moving forward. So appreciate your time and attention today. If you wouldn't mind sharing this with your family and friends, we would greatly appreciate that. Help us support the Rich Mind Podcast as we try to grow this as far and as wide as we possibly can. Leave us some feedback. And hopefully you got a ton out of this conference, this virtual conference that Greg attended. Hopefully you got a ton out of the conversation that we just had. And we look forward to coming back with the next episode, hopefully with a topic of yours very soon. We'll talk then. Bye now.